Welcome to the Roy Morgan Weekly Update. There was a slight swing to the Coalition this week, with the latest Roy Morgan survey showing the Coalition on 51%, up 1.5% from a week ago, ahead of the ALP on 49% on a two-party preferred basis. Now, the swing to the Coalition last week comes as Australians face several challenging issues, with discussion about changes to negative gearing and capital gains tax, community unease about scams, house price declines in many areas, and the behaviour of the large supermarkets under the spotlight for ripping off consumers and for high prices, and facing an ACCC investigation. These concerns all serve to make the community fairly jittery and volatile in terms of voting intention, and relatively small events can have a quite disproportionate impact on sentiment. There's also an important state election coming up, with Queenslanders set to vote at the end of the month and widely expected to change government and elect Coalition leader David Crisafulli as the next Premier. Perhaps with a nod to the upcoming state election, the biggest swing to the Coalition nationally this week was in the Sunshine State, Queensland. Roy Morgan will release a webinar a week prior to the election, revealing what Queenslanders think and who they trust and distrust. Now, this is the first time the Coalition has been in front for over a month, and they're ahead based on preferences being distributed as electors tell us. On the other hand, when preferences are allocated based on how Australians voted at the 2022 federal election, the result is reversed, with the ALP on 51.5%, ahead of the Coalition on 48.5%. This kind of result emphasises again how important preference flows will be in determining which major party is best placed to form government with the support of minor parties and independents after the next federal election. Because of course, if a federal election were held now, the result would be too close to call, and either major party would require the support of minor parties and independents to form a government. Other key indicators also went in the wrong direction for the government this week. Government confidence, whether people think the country's going in the right or the wrong direction, dropped 3.5 points to only 76.5. A majority, 54.5% of Australians, say the country's going in the wrong direction, while only 31% say the country's heading in the right direction. That leaves the indicator well below the neutral level of 100. ANZ Roy Morgan consumer confidence dropped 2.9 points to 82 after the Reserve Bank left interest rates unchanged last week for the 7th straight meeting. Although economists were unanimous that the Reserve Bank would leave interest rates unchanged, it appears some Australians were hoping for a cut, especially given the very widely publicised interest rate cuts in the United States. The Reserve Bank next meets to consider interest rates on Melbourne Cup Day in just over a month. By then, we'll have the key September quarter inflation figures. Last week, and after the Reserve Bank met, the ABS released monthly inflation indicators for August, which showed annual inflation drop to 2.7%. That's the lowest figure for over 3 years since the middle of 2021. And this is the first time the official inflation, albeit just the monthly indicator, has been within the Reserve Bank target range of 2 to 3% since the bank started raising interest rates in early 2022. Alongside lowering official inflation, Australians are also expecting lower inflation. This week, the ANZ Roy Morgan inflation expectations were down 0.3%, and Australians now expect annual inflation to be 4.6% per annum over the next 2 years. This fall in inflation expectations accords with recent moves in the average price of petrol. It dropped to under $1.73 per litre this week, its lowest for over 2 years. This is a drop of nearly 40 cents per litre since late April, when the average price was near record highs above $2.12 per litre. Despite the fall over the last 4 months, average retail petrol prices have now spent a record 105 weeks, just more than 2 years, since mid-September 2022, above $1.70 per litre. And finally today, a look at the supporter levels in the NRL, which hosts its grand final this weekend between two of the most successful teams of recent years, the Melbourne Storm and Penrith Panthers. The latest Roy Morgan figures on NRL supporters show over 7.4 million Australians now support an NRL club. That's up 176,000 from a year ago, and up by more than 2.1 million since 2020. A reminder, of course, that almost 10 million Australians support the AFL, so it has the edge. The latest NRL Supporter Ladder shows last year's beaten grand finalists, the Brisbane Broncos, have the largest supporter base, with 1,302,000 supporters. That's an increase of 152,000 on a year earlier, and that's the largest increase of any club. This is the first time the Broncos have been the most widely supported NRL club since 2019. In clear second place is the Melbourne Storm, with 1,118,000 supporters. The Storm played off in last year's final series, but have this year performed better and are playing off this weekend in the grand final. Their opponents, Penrith, are playing in a 5th straight grand final and aiming for 4 consecutive premierships. But they have one of the smaller supporter bases, with only 377,000 supporters. However, their recent success is paying dividends. The Panthers have more than doubled their supporter base since 2019, the biggest increase of any of the NRL clubs over this period. In the NRL Sydney Heartland, Parramatta has the largest supporter base with 500,000 supporters, just ahead of the Sydney Roosters on 474,000, South Sydney Rabbitohs on 468,000, and St George Illawarra Dragons on 419,000. For more information on how many supporters your club has, head over to the Roy Morgan website. And that's a wrap. Thank you for your interest this week in Roy Morgan's latest results, and I'll be back next week to bring you the most up-to-date readings on consumer confidence, inflation expectations, business confidence, and voting intention in Australia. Thanks for listening.